All right, hello to everybody. Our main task now is to create a space for discussion. We have 5 people, including me, but I will give much place to you all. I start with some point that I want to put, and then some questions. In the spirit of the large group, I hope we will find bridges between us, between the institutes, and I hope that we'll not be afraid of polemics, not just discussion, and I invite everybody of us to be polemic. Now, you see here, it's a book by the name The Organism of Kurt Goldstein, with foreword by Oliver Sacks. If you know Oliver Sacks, the man who mistook his wife for his head. It's the revolutionary neurology that we'll see in a minute. Now, I found, while putting myself in this position, I found an article, a little article, from the journal Contemporary Psychoanalysis from 1990, where Stephen Mitchell praised Kurt Goldstein. And it was a year before, when a political act of constituting a journal, Psychoanalytic Dialogue, was 1991. You had a paper there. Stephen Mitchell has a philosophical remarks on the beginning. Am I right? Yeah. Now, Goldstein, I'm reading now. Goldstein warns us, Goldstein warns us against the danger of zoomorphism, by which we look to establish our own nature by arbitrarily assigning one to animals and then reasoning from lower to higher animals to higher. Animals may not be so simple, Goldstein warns us. In thinking we understand them, we may be projecting aspects of ourselves, using them as a distorted mirror in a way which has nothing to do with them at all. This has surely been a prophetic warning, as contemporary study of animals' behavior suggests that Freud's vision of the nature of sexuality, while distinctly human, seems to have little to do with animal. The metaphor which has been most compelling and inspirational to generations of analysts living in these last several decades, Mitchell warns us, during which the metaphor of the beast has waned, nigmelu, has been the metaphor of the baby. Here Goldstein warning has even more prophetic utility. For Goldstein, in phantomorphism, morphism, it's like a form, one line. Morphism is just as dangerous as zoomorphism. And I know a lot of students in our institute and elsewhere, you know, the kindergarten, we have this, we are the teacher as instructors, and the students are babies. So let's remember Stephen Mitchell. Now, in a psychoanalytic journal in German, Imago, in the year 1936, 2 years after Fuchs flee from Germany, he was writing a very vast paper on Kurt Goldstein. Following Goldstein's revolutionary discoveries of the brain as a network, Fuchs refused to localize mental pathology within the individual and developed the idea of a location of mental disturbances between people in a social, relational network matrix. And in collaboration with Kurt Goldstein, neurology, Martin Buber, philosophy, I really you can read in Lou Aron's book, in English and in Hebrew, a vast paragraphs about Martin Buber that also flew from Germany to Jerusalem. All from Franklin University before the Nazi subjugation, Fuchs revolutionized many names, Norbert Elias, Franz Borkenau, and others. Erich Fromm went to the United States. Fuchs revolutionized the old paradigm of the mind inside the individual to a new conception of the mind as a transpersonal phenomenon. I have a paper from 205 elaborating and exploring this idea. Another trace of Goldstein influence on group analysis can be spotted in Fuchs' utmost common concern to create group analytic equivalents of psychoanalytic concepts in order to establish the objectivity of the group analytic field as a field in its own right, not just as a mere application of psychoanalysis, or as we used to call it in the 70s here, remember, the little sister of psychoanalysis. Fuchs' epistemological view followed Goldstein and Cassirer view that the old dichotomies of an inside and outside world, constitution and environment, individual and society, fantasy and reality, body and mind, and so on, are untenable from 1948. In the light of our present conference about mutual vulnerabilities, let's listen to Fuchs' own words and feelings, okay, from 1936. For me, the present work of Goldstein flew from the Nazis to the United States, and he wrote this book in 1934. For me, the present work of Goldstein is more than a book. It is faded away sounds from a world literally vanished. Written shortly after his immigration, this is the only passage in his work, at least the only one that I know, where Fuchs openly expressed the deep pain and agony over the loss of his native country, intellectual tradition, his language, his culture, his friends, his family of origin. Okay, saw it probably. Next. A Meeting of Mind, Louis Aron from 1996. Louis Aron writes, the relational approach places human relationships rather than biological drives. Okay, we heard it before. At its theoretical center, the relational perspective approaches traditionally held distinctions dialectically, attempting to maintain a balance between internal and external relationship, the intrapsychic and the interpersonal, the intrasubjective and intersubjective, the individual and the social. Relation theory is based on the shift from the classical idea that it is the patient mind that is being studied, where mind is thought to exist independently and autonomously within the boundaries of the individual, to the relational notion of the mind is inherently dyadic, social, interactional, interpersonal. From a relational perspective, in investigating the mind, the analytic process necessarily entails a study of the intersubjective field. In page 62, complicated the matters a bit more. Well, Altman has suggested that we speak not of one or a two-person psychology, but of a three-person psychology. Altman rightly points to that a wider social system perspective can enrich the understanding of both the individual and the dyad. Just a minute. Well, can you put the other one in a minute? All right. Now, another one, please. Okay. I want to, for this conference, this is something that Norbert Elias and Fuchs, co-founder of Group Analytic Society, it's the theoretical platform of group analysis. And listen, it's from 1939. Each gesture and act of the infant is neither the product of his inside, nor of his environment, nor of an interaction between an inside and an outside which were originally separate, but a function and precipitate of relation. Precipitate is mishka בעברית, and can be understood like a figure of a thread in a net only from a totality of the network. If you look at this slide, red marks its relational language, green color mark its network language. So it's a bit different. Likewise, the speech of others develop in the growing child something which is entirely his language and at the same time a product of his relation to others, an expression of the human network within which he lives. In the same way, ideas, convictions, affects, needs, and character traits are produced in the individual enough through intercourse with other things which make up his personal self and in which is expressed from this very reason the network of relations from which he has emerged and into which he passes. And in this way, this self, this personal essence, is formed in a continuous interweaving of needs. It is the order of this incessant interweaving. It's the language want to be a language of flows, not of static, without a beginning that determines the nature and the form of the individual human being. Even the nature and the form of his solitude, even what he feels to be his inner life, is stamped by the history of his relationships, by the structure of the human network in which, as one of its nodal points, he develops and lives as an individual. Now, can I have the other? Okay. This is from 1968. It is a collaboration of Fuchs with Norbert Elias. Now you see a very interesting phenomena. If you look at the concentric things, something that every textbook, the me, the ego, is inside family school. He called it basic pattern of the egocentric view of society. Now, if you look to figure 2, you see a figuration of interdependent relational individuals. You see the individual ego, symbol or self, symbol for a more or less unstable balance of power, and open, untouched valences. Here the group, even though Hani, you didn't mention Bion, the concept of valency is from Bion's book on groups. And here we see an assimilation of the concept valency in the group analytic tradition. Okay, now I will pose questions for discussion, and everybody of us can ask another question. Why Fuchs, the other slide please? Okay. Why Fuchs was never cited, although he wrote 12 articles and reviews in the International Journal of Psychoanalysis in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, in any of the variety of psychoanalytic journals, despite the fact that he pleaded for response at least once before the Second World War. How is it possible that a man of such erudition as Stephen Mitchell, did not know about the constitutive relationship between Kurt Goldstein and Fuchs? What are the reasons for such a delay in recognizing group analysis as an essential part of the psychoanalytic movement and tradition? Was the notion social unconscious so frightening because it was an inherent relational foundation of both the analyst and the analysand at an era when the countertransference was just something to be cured from? Was the fact that Fuchs in the winter of 1940 asked some of his psychoanalytic patients to rise from the couch, literally, sit in a circle and free associate in the midst of World War II war, so traumatic and monstrous, to use our own phrase, to the psychoanalytic community, so that silence and muting was an unconscious response or an intentional alienation and exclusion? And 6, is this very multi-layered conference with our honorary guests and us, 3 organizations, and maybe more people, will create a common language and collaboration for years to come, or will we find ourselves wallowing still in the mud of the city of Babylon? Okay, this is my part.